Well, first of all, I want to thank everyone who's come to see this talk. I do love Atlantic Avenue. I've been chatting about a lot of memories. My husband actually grew up on Pacific Street in the 70s, and I don't know if anyone remembers stores like Nancy Boutique that he and his friends all wore her t-shirts, and you know, Sahadi's was there then, but a lot has changed. I think, you know, they were like, his parents were artists, and you know, part of the sort of bohemian, like, artist movement, the brownstoner movement. People who are into preserving the brownstones, and you know, always had this dream of what the neighborhood could become, and it took a long time. They actually, his family moved to California. I mean, it took a long time. As anyone from Brooklyn knows, but I think, you know, what's happened is beyond their wildest dreams, and they, you know, it's thriving. And Atlantic Avenue is really the heart of it. Anyway, just before anything, I want to give some thanks to Chris and Novita and her whole team, to Cafe, to Cafe Kitsuné, love this place, to Shelley and Mud Australia for having the first North American MudTalk today. Thank you. To Atlantic Avenue Day of Design and Borum Hill Design Night, which I'm sure you'll all want to partake in later tonight after the talk, and NYC by Design, of course. You each got a gift bag, hopefully, or many of you did. You might or might not know that one of them has a golden ticket. So one lucky person has a golden ticket. You can wait to the end of the talk before you discover. No, yeah. I'm sure you've already rummaged through. Okay, well, I just want to start with introductions. We have three. Of course, I want to thank our wonderful panelists, and I want to introduce them. So, Shelley Simpson is the founder and creative director of Mud Australia. She creates elegant and timeless, beautifully colored porcelain homewares and lighting. Shelley, you founded your company in 1994 in your studio garage and grew it into a global business with over 100 employees and stores across Australia, but also Los Angeles, New York, and London. Every Mud Australia piece is handmade in the Sydney studio using Limoges porcelain clay and quality pigments and glaze. And the pieces Shelley creates are functional and handcrafted, and a favorite of some of the people I idolize, like Nigella and Yodam Ottolenghi. In 2020, Shelley established the Shelley Simpson Ceramic Prize to support emerging ceramics artists, with the annual winner receiving a $10,000 cash prize to further pursue their ceramics career. And you also serve as a mentor for a year.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Michele Varian, hello. Michele is a designer and shop owner who launched her first shop in Soho almost 20 years ago. And you're kind of like a cult figure in the design world, also fashion.
It started in fashion, and you know, when I opened my thing, I switched.
In 2020, Michele moved both the shop and what I think is so cool, the fabrication studio, to Atlantic Avenue. She designs her own collections of textiles, lighting, wallpaper, and furniture. They're all made in-house or locally, like around the corner, which is amazing. The shop also showcases the work of over 100 other, mostly local designers of home products and jewelry. It sounds like to have your jewelry featured, you should maybe be a graduate of working at the store.
We actually have a lot of employees who've become jewelers and whose line we now carry.
Love that. And today, Michele divides her time between New York and Ontario, Canada, where she's restoring a house in Hamilton. And then Sarah Zames, I've known for quite some time. Sarah's the founder and principal of General Assembly and the co-founder of Assembly Line on Atlantic Avenue, which is having an opening tonight. Sarah has a master's in architecture from UCLA and worked for several major architecture firms before shifting into interiors and co-founding General Assembly in 2011 with her partner, Colin Stife. I met Sarah when we at El Decor, she sent a project, amazing project in upstate New York. It was the home of Amanda Seyfried. Beautiful, beautiful project, which we were thrilled to feature. And in 2021, it's interesting in the last few years how much change there's been and people just like shifting their approach. So in 2021, she and Colin launched the storefront, where they champion both established and emerging designers and serve as a bridge to both professional designers and Brooklynites and others who love design. Okay, so I'm going to start first with a lightning round so you can get to know each panelist, then some questions, and I will leave time at the end for your questions. So start thinking up questions right now. Okay, so Shelley.
Yes.
Lightning round. Your style in 2 words.
Creative classic.
Okay.
Elevated craft.
Honest and approachable.
Okay.
I want that one.
Anytime, I live in Carroll Gardens, anyone from outside of New York, they always ask me, what's your favorite Brooklyn restaurant? I get that question, so giving it to you.
Well, I'm not local, so I don't know them all, but when I come, and my team is so sick of going there, but I love it, French Louis. Yeah.
French what?
French Louis.
Louis.
I recently went to Theodora for the first time and it was fantastic. Beautiful design as well as excellent food.
I keep hearing
and there were a
about
lot of locals, which was and we were able to show up that night.
That's important.
I don't do lines. And
Same.
not usually a planner for reservations.
Okay.
Much more spontaneous.
I keep hearing that place is great.
It is, it's lovely.
Okay, Sarah.
I was thinking about this, and I have to say rucola, which is right down the street, because it's just what I crave all the time.
That
So I go
salad?
there a
I
lot.
agree.
Oh yeah, it's
The
so
salad.
good. The salad.
Pork
With
sandwich
the-
isn't bad either.
Yeah.
Hungry at
So
Alchemy.
good.
Yeah.
Okay, favorite music to play in the store?
I don't control them anymore, but I love when I walk into a store in Brooklyn and I hear a classic kind of 90s, Australian song.
Such as?
So like, there's a band called the Go-Betweens that I loved
love that
at that time, and I love walking in and hearing the sort of the lilting memory. They don't play the music loud enough in the store. I've never really got that. Note to self, note to team, if anyone's here, turn it up.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, to that point, I actually feel very strongly that the music has to be just loud enough so that people feel like they have privacy because they can't be overheard. And I really think it's important to sort of feel like you're in the zone. And I'm from Detroit, and so I like mixing it up and making sure there's a little bit of funk for my roots, and a little bit of lounge, and 90s rock as well. Kind of what I would play if I were entertaining. And full disclosure, there's a lot of crash test dummies in rotation. 'Cause the singer-songwriter is my husband.
I was just gonna ask.
So there's actually stuff that he's not happy about in there because I have some pieces that were never released.
Okay, Sarah.
I mean, I change it up all the time, but I love shopping and zoning out, so I like listening to stuff that I like to listen to on a Sunday. So lately it's been Sade. I want to feel like a little bit cool, a little bit cooler. Aspirational music.
Sade's always good.
Yeah.
Always.
Always.
Okay, I'm curious, what is your best-selling product?
We make a bowl that was a mistake called the Pebble Bowl, and the wedding size one is the one we sell we can't make enough of them. We sell them hand over fist. Yeah.
We have such a broad category, so it really is, it depends on which category, and it kind of ends up being even. So we have a couple of light fixtures that go, like table lamps that go like that we make. And our jewelry, there are a few pieces that we very much engineer, you know, the selection so that there's something for every occasion, not just a big indulgence. And we have several gold necklaces that are around $200 that are like, you know, my niece is graduating, like that kind of first piece of jewelry for a family member or goddaughter, that kind of thing. Those we sell a lot of. And yeah.
We're relatively new, so I think it changes very frequently, but I would say for the last 6 months or so, Medicine Cabinets by Josh Green. Like, it's just like the major sale like that happens most frequently, which is weird because it's like a pretty major investment.
Right. But finding a good one.
Yeah, but finding a good one's so hard. It's unique. It's not something you can find in a lot of places. So.
I definitely didn't expect that.
Yeah,
But.
I know.
I didn't
either.
That's why I'm asking. Okay, if you could buy one thing in your store.
I like the little pop lamp that I've got over there, the little pink one.
Yeah.
That's a new piece. That is the first time I've collaborated with an industrial designer, because I don't know how to do any of the electrics with, and he did a really great job. So, yeah, the pop.
Yeah. I own a lot of stuff that's in the store. I only buy things that I like.
Well, what's the next thing?
One of my new fixtures, the Dreamscape, we haven't hung it yet, but we made sure that it made it on the truck to get to Canada. So that's going to be, like, I can't wait till we can unpack it.
We carry a furniture maker called Fern, and they do a lot of really beautiful custom, semi-custom pieces. And we had a coffee table made for when we opened called the May coffee table, and it's like super heavy and wonderful. And we just sold the one that we had off the floor, and someday I will own it. I'm going to make it exactly the same. Yeah.
What's your favorite place in the world other than Brooklyn?
Probably Byron Bay. Beautiful, beautiful oceans. It's Indigenous people to the area say you shouldn't live there. You should just visit because it's a place of healing. But gee, I'd like to go and spend a lot of time there. It's a wonderful place. Yeah.
Everybody's gonna be like, really? But I've always lived in cities, and I love cities, and I like scrappy environments, and I still am extremely passionate about Detroit. Like, I like that it creates people who make things happen.
Mine is kind of a cliche because it's touristy, but I love it, which is Venice, Italy. It's like pure magic. Like, you just kind of wander and get lost, and it's so awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, now there's no cruise ships.
Yeah.
That's such a good tip.
Yeah.
Brave of them,
Yes.
in a way.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite hotel?
I have lots of hotels that I've never stayed in. I would love to stay in, but I tend not to stay in hotels. When I travel, I stay with friends. That's where I've been in London, staying with a friend in Queen's Park. And here we've got a little flat down there in Park Slopes that we get to stay in. So it's nice because you get to be part of the community, and that's the stuff that I love the most about traveling is seeing old friends and catching up and being a regular in a coffee shop somewhere that's a completely different part of the world. But yeah.
Do you spend a lot of time in Brooklyn?
I have spent a lot of time in Brooklyn. I have, and when we weren't allowed to travel because Australia got locked down during pandemic time, I really felt that it was missing. Yeah, but we got back. Yeah.
Well, I feel bad now. I'm like, well, likewise. I never stay in hotels, and my husband loves hotels. I dislike them tremendously. I don't like the feeling trapped almost. Like I love visiting friends and then doing what they do, because that's how you really see a city.
Yeah.
I'm the opposite. I love hotels so much. I love them so much. I will go and stay at them in the city just to get a break from my apartment. So this was a hard question for me. But there was a hotel on Lake Como that I stayed in last year, and it was the Gran Tremezzo. That was ridiculously nice, and I will probably not stay anywhere as nice as that ever again. Like, that's probably it, yeah.
Can I take mine back? Because I did stay in a hotel I liked.
Okay.
Just recently I went to Japan and I went down to Naoshima and stayed at I can never
The
say
Venice.
it. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was extraordinary, but only for one night.
Okay, and a store that you love outside of New York City, anywhere in the world.
Mookie Moo in Chilton Street, New York. It's a dress shop that looks tiny. It's the tiniest dress shop, but she has the best selection, and I can afford maybe one thing if I buy it.
In London?
In London, in Chilton, where the Chilton Firehouse is. It's an amazing store. She's been there for a long time too.
And jewelry.
And jewelry, yes.
And
James.
objects.
And objects.
I actually love the hardware stores in London.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, who knew you could get a nail this beautiful?
The Bon Marché. I just, again, don't really know what's going on, don't speak the language. I think I like places where I can just like get lost and get zoned out, and I love a department store, any department store, yeah.
A dying breed.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know if anyone knows Printemps from Paris, but I just heard that they're opening in New York.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's
next spring.
exciting.
Which neighborhood do you know?
I think downtown. Yeah. I was very surprised. Okay, so now I'm going to focus the conversation on questions on our topic, retail renaissance. Shelley, how did you get started in design and retail?
So I probably would call myself potter to start with, because that's where everything, my design career started there. I moved into a share house when I was 30 with somebody who had a kick wheel, which is a pottery wheel that you use your foot to turn. And she told me to have a go, and I avoided it for a very long time. And then one day I just walked in and spent a summer's afternoon making pieces. She came home, saw what I'd done, and said, I can't believe you've done this. I've been doing classes for ages, how can you do this? And so from there it was obvious that that was my passion started, and I was obsessed. I could spend hours, weeks at a time just making things, and they were awful, the things that I made. Just they were terrible, but I would give them to people and people would go, oh, thank you so much, oh my God, you're so clever, and get really excited about it. And so that was enough to motivate me to keep making more terrible things and handing them around to my friends. And then eventually I don't know, I started just simplifying everything. I spoke to people in stores. I wanted it to be my job, so I started talking to people who would potentially carry, like you guys, who would carry the things that I made, and I asked what you needed. And I wanted it to be the job. I didn't want to be an artist in the corner that wasn't, that was starving. I wanted to be someone who could actually just do this every day, all the time. And my dream came true. I got to do it all the time.
Yeah. Well, I started in fashion design, and when I was in fashion design was as the fashion world had really begun outsourcing to other countries, which meant I got to travel a lot, and that was fantastic. But being from Detroit, really early on during the oil crisis and whatnot, Made in America was driven in way earlier than for everybody else. And so it didn't sit well with me that we were taking all of this knowledge elsewhere and producing it there, and then the carbon footprint, which we didn't have a term for probably then, but all of that, and when after I opened the store, when editors would say, "Do you have anything green?" I was like, "Well, I make my things locally right in house," and they'd be like, "But do you have anything green?" And I'd be like, "Well, that is," and it was like there was no real comprehension of the whole ecosystem. But from working in fashion, in working for other people, there were so many times that things just fell apart because somebody didn't do something on time. That fabric didn't get ordered, whatever. Or cash flow issues, so they waited, and it was a bad idea to wait, etc. So I really wanted to start my own company, and there was no way I could afford to do a fashion brand. The overhead to do fashion is ginormous, and I had grown up. I grew up in a house that required restoration, and my parents didn't have any money, so we learned how to do all of those things. And so I decided to segue into home textiles, and I had all of my textile resources from having worked in fashion, and was able to bring that in. And also the number of vendors that I worked with that were willing to really bend over backwards to make it possible for me to start was invaluable. The minimums for textiles are really huge. You're looking at thousands of yards. And they'd be like, "Oh, we've got an offcut that's 20 yards. We'll let you do that." Things like that really helped and really allowed me to get going. And I started when New York was still somewhat affordable. Like, I don't know that I could start today. It's really become formidable to do anything unless you come from money, and I did not. And then I started doing my own thing and doing pillow covers with the textiles, and was lucky to get into great department stores like Barney's and Neiman Marcus right away. And then 9/11 happened, and all the trade shows were canceled. And at that time, that was the only way you could communicate with buyers, was like you had to physically get together and show them things. And so no trade show meant no orders. And so I was like, I'll just open my own store. And there was a for rent sign in a window between, my husband and I coincidentally happened to live a block and a half from each other. And I was like, that's for me. And it was this shitty little space that we gutted and, did ourselves.
Didn't you say it was your bike courier's office? Or?
It was my bike courier's office,
Yeah.
who, again, like another company that really bent over backwards to make it possible to do things. Like if I wasn't home, they would hold things for me and, stuff like that. And they closed right after 9/11. And so I was like, and they had a big turn of the century bicycle with a big wheel and a smaller wheel in the window, which was incongruous because it was like, it's like very quaint. You walk inside, it was a shit show. it was like 20 little cubbies with wires everywhere, and didn't smell great and all of that. And we just basically ripped it all out and found all the old wood and started there. And that's turns out I really like owning a store.
Sarah, your trajectory was so different from being a shopkeeper.
Yeah. So I always joke that I have been reducing my scale. So I started more like urban planning, urban design, and then went into architecture and worked in kind of like big firm stuff. So I had like a whole previous life doing that. And then I realized that I just was really unhappy. I think I just felt like really disconnected from the spaces that I was working on. And so I left, and my intention actually was to stay more architecture, but I just kept like gravitating more towards interiors. Like I think that I've always kind of really think about things from the inside out. I really like having something that is like grounding to work from rather than kind of like building in absence. Like I think that I kind of realized like partway on that I think that has always been an interest of mine, but I actually think I gravitated more towards architecture because it's serious and like it's a little bit more like you have to go to more school and like people take you more seriously or like I thought this, and I thought that actually when I started at SOM they like put me in the interiors department when I thought that I was like interviewing for architecture, and I got there and showed up the first day and I just like I made a huge stink. I was like, I'm not doing this. Like you're doing this because I'm a woman. I don't know anything about pillows. Like it took me a year to get back out into the architecture side. And then basically I left and realized that over time it was really just like residential, being like connected to people personally and like kind of really enjoying that aspect of it, like the intimacy of it, like that it's okay to think about memory, to like think about things that, you know, you have to be disciplined, but it's also okay to kind of like reference things that you remember. And so that was that. And then that, I think General Assembly was like 12 or 13 years ago. And then the shop, basically when I transitioned from architecture to interiors, I just felt like there was like this major disconnect out there for people who kind of were really interested in design, but not necessarily, you know, be able to access designers or even know where they were. Like everything was trade only, appointment only. You have to know this person to get this fabric, or if you go to like the designer building, there's just 8 million fabrics and it's too overwhelming, even if you're in the field. So I just felt like there was a disconnect, and I always wanted to open something that kind of addressed that, also was accessible and not intimidating. You know, like you go into these showrooms and even I get really intimidated. You know, people can be a little bit rude in our industry. Not everyone, like most people are really nice, but there is sometimes some attitude, and I wanted to make sure that it was storefront, that people could come in, they could come in during like off hours and weekends and really be able to like touch and feel and like understand like the weight of something, like how you can make something custom and it can be your own, and that it can last hopefully your whole life, and that, you know, you don't have to, like, you know, it's an investment. It's something that you want to keep for a long time, and hopefully that's not, you know, you're not buying something that you're going to replace in 5 years because of a trend, and trying to show that value. And then I guess the other thing for the shop was, as I had built like General Assembly, I got to know a lot more independent designers and people who were great and didn't necessarily have that platform, that storefront platform. There just aren't, like, I think our block is amazing, but there aren't like a ton of design stores in the city. When I would go to London,
Not
I actually
anymore.
would be, yeah, now there's a ton, now everyone has one, but
No, I meant not anymore, like,
oh,
so many,
design.
like,
Oh yeah, like
yeah.
I mean, it comes and goes, I
Yeah.
think, and like I remember going to London, and you can go in and you can buy tile, you can buy flooring from like a little shop in the neighborhood. You don't have to, and along with other things, and that just didn't seem to exist here.
Your edit is so good. I happen to be renovating my place right when the store opened,
Yeah.
and I remember going in there and thinking, like, because I love a fabric line you carry,
Yeah.
but I'm an editor, but there's thousands of choices.
Right.
It's very overwhelming.
Right.
And I go into your shop and it's like, oh well, here's the 10 choices.
yeah.
That, you know. So
That's the
I
goal.
think it's great. So I'm curious, Atlantic Avenue. That's what this is all about. Why did you put your storefront on Atlantic Avenue in Brooklyn?
Well, we were both in the city.
Just a couple
and
blocks from each other.
Just a couple
Yeah.
blocks, and we knew of each other's businesses, and we're pretty happy to be in the same neighbourhood. And then after 5 years in Crosby Street, my landlord sold the building, and the new landlord said, "Oh, we're going to triple your rent." So, and then I looked for other stores in the city, and I couldn't find another store that I could afford. I mean, we make pots, and although we've got 12 stores, we're still making pots by hand in a first world country. So there's not a lot of spare cash at the end of the day. You want to sort of make something that's the best quality it can be, but anyway, so I don't want to be spending that money on rent. And I'd been here before because I'd been to the antique stores. When we opened our Crosby Street store, I bought a couple of pieces to put in there from out here. And I really liked being out here. I like the, I mean, there's nothing quite like walking around this neighbourhood at this time of year. It's pretty special, except for the pollen.
We're all going.
Yeah, I just started looking. We were looking on other streets, and that bodega, which was a beloved bodega by so many of the neighbourhood, and but had been closed for a long time before we came along, I looked at it and it was not in a very good place, and I'd sent my team in to look at it and they said, there's no way that can be in that store. And so when I arrived in New York to have a look, we went in and went, of course this can. And what's behind all of this metal? We started peeling the metal off and found the original windows and the original side door, which we then copied the front door to match. And so everything about this community is fantastic, and that's what Mud does. We go to places that we love to go to. It's about places and that we love to go to, and create communities within those areas. And then I get to come and play from time to time, which is great.
And so now you were
In
just
Soho
pretty lucky,
for 20
right?
years, yeah.
Like you made a fateful decision.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, super lucky because I'd had my shop in Soho for 20 years, and I lived in Soho until very recently, and not only was it formidably expensive. I would talk to my dad, and he'd be like, "You mean without that extra zero?" And I'd be like, "No, Dad. Sadly, I won't say it here because it's gobsmacking." And so it's like I'd like to pay myself, beyond my employees, and also Soho has changed so much because when I opened, it was a lot more businesses like my own.
Yeah.
And when you guys were still there, it was a lot more independently owned businesses. They were kind of businesses that you could go to find things you'd never find anywhere else. And now, it has become, like a conventional shopping mall almost.
Mm-hmm.
And even most New Yorkers don't like shopping in Soho.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really felt strongly about finding a neighborhood and a retail strip that really was integrated into the community as like really a reflection of the community, and with lots of small independent owners, and then very, very lucky that I got the keys January 1st, 2020, and we opened about 4 weeks before the full-on shutdown. And we weren't even fully open, we were still renovating. But we were kind of working our way back and opening a little bit at a time.
So that saved you all the rent.
Oh, well, and also
in
Soho
Yeah.
during the pandemic was gutted. It was, it's really, to me, a kind of a case study of like a good communal health or not. Because so many of the people who have more recently moved to Soho have other homes. They're very wealthy. They just weren't there. There was no one there. Mm-hmm. And except for myself and mostly the artists who were like in their 70s, who've been there since the 70s, they were still there. And myself, I actually saw my neighbors for the first time in a long time because there weren't 100 tourists for every one of us, walking on the street. But if stores didn't open in Soho for a good year after they opened here, because there was no there. There was nobody going and walking around, and it was all boarded up. And I mean, my husband and I were living on Broadway, and all the protests went up and down, Broadway all the time, and it was all like kind of wonderful. But then when the looting began afterwards, Soho was just devastated, but Atlantic Avenue, because it's much more integrated into the community and people were living here, there were still people here. And they were happy to get out of their homes and start walking around. And so really thinking about what's sustainable and create stability is, I think, really important. And just chasing AAA tenants, AAA credit tenants, they were the first to haul ass out of Soho, and they were like, sue us, sure, try, you know.
Sarah, Atlantic Avenue
Yeah.
like seems perfect for.
Yeah,
what
well,
you're
I
doing.
mean,
Yeah.
I think like, I was just listening to that and I feel like, I come from the perspective, I lived in Carroll Gardens, I've been in Carroll Gardens for like 15 years or so, and I was drawn to Atlantic because I kind of was watching the dynamic change and like what you're saying kind of about people leaving Soho. I think a lot of them were coming here.
Absolutely.
And they were buying townhouses and they
Yes.
were, like they were changing the neighborhood really quickly. And sometimes for the better. And like, I think, just a lot of new development happening. And so I felt like Atlantic Ave was like this perfect spot from like a practical like business sense between townhouses, new development. Like we were able to get kind of like younger people who are professionals and interested in investing in their homes, but maybe are still renting and are at a certain level. And then there's the people who are just all of a sudden moving from a 2-bedroom apartment in Soho to this like giant townhouse. And so it kind of captures a lot of that. And then I think also I live in the neighborhood. I'm friends with Lauren across the street from Primary Essentials. I knew that I wanted to be on that block. Stephen Allen Home used to be in my spot, and I used to just love walking up there and like buying a stool. Like I like to walk like and get like a piece for my home that seems like completely irrational like purchase all at once. So I really wanted something in the neighborhood that felt like that. So it's kind of like it was hard to find a place because everyone just really kind of was figuring that out all at the same time. Yeah.
One of the themes of this talk is conscious consumption. So I'm curious about that because, of course, a retail store is about selling products. But I know that is a very important, issue for all of you. How do you thread the needle?
I feel like we're going in this row
Yeah.
each time. But, we care about what we make, and we care about the planet, and we care about our employees, and we care about this community. And I think that all of that is really important. I don't think that, I don't want to be doing something that's going to end up in landfill. We recycle everything. We gather rainwater off the roof to clean our buckets with. We have solar panels all over the roof of our building. We do lots of things, and I think that it speaks to what you make. I think when you pick up a piece of mud, it kind of all of that energy goes into the making of the pieces, and I don't think that we can be everything to everyone. And I think that we say buy one piece, make a collection of pieces, add your there are 19 colours and a heap of shapes. You add your personality to your dinner set. We're not deciding that for you. So all of those different things sort of talk to, whether it's environmental or the personality of what's going on. I think that is, for me, that's what it's about. And good design is sustainable design. If something can sit on your table or carry your your flowers for a long time, you can keep it and give it to your kids. Then I think it's not the wrong thing to buy.
I very consciously try to have various price points, which means, and I feel very much like Shelley, very passionate about being conscious about the impacts of what you make and operate as a business. I feel very strongly about that, but I also try to complement that with accessibility. And it's a kind of a constant balance, and I like to do that even though it means importing some things that are mass produced. I feel like I want to make sure whoever comes in the door is not alienated. And when, unfortunately, what it costs to manufacture very consciously is expensive, and it is not accessible to everybody. But I also think that by having things that are accessible, you expose more people to that, and they aspire to be able to do that. And during the pandemic, it was extremely gratifying how aware, how much more aware our customer base became of that sustainability. I mean, unfortunately, you would have been shipping things from Australia, so the supply chain issues and shipping things may have been a challenge, but like we didn't have supply chain issues because we manufacture locally and in-house.
Yeah, I think like too, like as far as like conscious consumption goes, I mean, for us, like the thing that kind of tipped me over the edge of even opening the shop was pandemic of, you know, trying to get people to be more mindful or thoughtful about what they're spending on. You know, like even as like a designer, I've gotten so used to just like clicking and buying things that, you know, haven't even like touched or felt or sat in before. So we really pushed the storefront first. In fact, I opened that up and didn't have a website for 10 months because websites are annoying and hard to build. But it was really just about trying to get people out and able to touch things and understand what goes into what's behind it, like who the makers are, like how the materials are on it, like how things will like change over time and why things cost what they do. Like, I agree. We also try and keep like a high low as much as we can because good design doesn't have to be always, you know, always insanely expensive. But sometimes it is, and you understand why. People are making these things and living, and they're not, you know, they're not loaded. They're getting by, and they're passionate about their craft.
Right. Most of the people we work with are not making bank.
But even that is a conscious decision. I mean, that's a decision as a company that we make, that it's about having a really lovely lifestyle. We're not poor anymore, but we're doing our best for everyone within our team. You know? So making and the community and doing it as well as we can.
Yeah, and doing what you love to do is a great luxury. Like that is, I feel very lucky every day. My husband's a musician and he can make a living doing that. You know, and his parents and grandparents, et cetera, all were like, no, you can't do that. And he's the one who ended up paying their mortgage. But that was just luck.
Well, I do love that band. I'm Canadian, but I have so many questions, but I really want to leave time for other people's questions. Does anyone have?
I have a question.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if any of you use data in your deciding, you know, new products, lines, or developing ideas, or how that works.
I mean, I think that you know, there's Shopify is pretty great in getting a lot of information, and I think like that's a new thing. But I would say it would be so nice to use more data, but I think running a shop and keeping everything together and doing all that stuff, there isn't really a whole lot of time to mine through things the way that it would be nice to.
My answer to that would just be, I am very driven by my gut. And I feel very strongly about paying attention. And I do think that what makes, I think, all of our shops really titillating is that they are, you know, people are dialed into what our taste is. And they want that reflected, like they like that that's what's reflected by each of our businesses. And you know, data can really distort that. You know, and the people who create the data are not necessarily sophisticated. You know, if you choose to be associated with Silicon Valley, that world, you're probably less likely to be passionate about ceramics. You know?
I think that there's a lot. I mean, I think I agree with like everything in our shop is something that I would only put in a project. I mean, I feel like I vet everything very carefully, but I think as far as like knowing where your customers are, like I really want to try and build my online presence more than it is, as much as I held off on that for so long, because it supports my artists, it supports the people, and it gets their name out. You know, and so for me, it's really just like a pure, like, kind of, how do I get to California? Like, how do I get, like, these projects and products, like, in front of people that maybe haven't seen it before? So not trying to be, like, too pushy with the sales, but I think there are a lot of useful tools out there that weren't there before, which
Yes.
is nice.
Yeah.
I mean, I can say a lot of bad things about
I think-
Shopify too.
I think there's a question here.
Yeah, my question is more for Shelley. You mentioned, the 12 stores around the world and, your gut too, but I'm curious how you see trends reflect color, texture on a global scale and how you as a business person and an artist respond.
I don't think, well, trends around the world. I've had 19 colours for a very long time. And interestingly, when the colour of the year comes up, for some reason, it tends to be one of the colours that we already have. And it is a cycle, so those colours keep coming around in a cycle. I don't want to take colours away because people have already invested in their dinner sets and in their homes, and I want them to always be able to pick up another plate or expand their dinner set, So I would love to do more, but as James said, we've got over 2,000 SKUs. How do we keep everything in the right place if we just keep adding and adding and adding? I think for fun now, we sort of do things with our rescue clay. So we've got a lot of clay that hits the floor and gets contaminated. It can never be the right colour again, but we can take that clay and rework it and re-tint it to create a brand new colour and do a limited edition run of that, which we've just done with our Rescue Rose, which was really successful. And so we can sort of play with colour and have something that's a temporary thing rather than being part of the permanent collection. It's so much fun being able to travel around the world and look at retail. Like I love retail, I love fashion as well, but the trends, the global trends, I feel like I'm on a cycle. It's like I'm 60 now, so I gotta keep going around and going, can I wear it again? I wore it in the 80s, can I do that again? So, yeah.
How are we doing? I think one more question.
Yeah, I have a question regarding do you use the digital design service in your sales process, and how many interior designers actually are your vendors who are buying some stuff for their clients?
In the US, a lot more than in Australia, I would say. No, maybe we do. We have interior designers everywhere. I probably was introduced to them first before I had retail stores at the Paris trade show or coming to New York trade shows. They're lovely orders because they're usually substantial. We love it when an interior designer comes in and talks to us about doing a big fit out of somebody's amazing house in the Hamptons or wherever it might be. But I also love being in the store when somebody pops in. I remember being in my Melbourne store when a woman came in with her daughter and she was buying a graduation present of a 4-piece dinner set for her daughter. And I thought that was a really lovely thing. She loved the product so much and the daughter loved the product as well. So that sort of connection with people and that sort of multi-generational thing is really lovely as well. So yeah, I like all of it.
Probably have thoughts on that.
I mean, I think I'm so integrated into what that is. I feel like I think I'm looking at it from the perspective on the interior design side, and I think it's going to be very interesting to me, what I said before, that everyone has a design shop now. I mean, that's obviously not true, but I think that it's not like that DIY thing that people wanted to do, that has gotten such a bad rep. But I think what I was trying to say earlier about having accessibility and approachability and being able to do little bits of things on your own is just going to continue. And so shops and interior design are always going to get a little bit more mushed together is my theory. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks so much. I mean, I think I could talk to you for another hour. And listen to you. I think we have a pretty rapt audience. But I think I heard that there are also free drinks. Right? And so I don't want to hold that up. And just want to thank everyone involved. Remind you that it's Borum Hill Design Night. please visit Mud Australia, Michele Varian, Assembly Line, which has an opening tonight. I think there are many other amazing places. The Ace Hotel has things, Picture Room, Porta, Primary Essentials. Don't forget to check.
A lot of us are staying open late, so
Staying open
you know
late.
you can have a drink and probably still catch a lot of the shops.
Yeah.
It's always a great way to do some shopping after a drink.
Yeah, we encourage it.
I always want them to sit on later. I'm always like running out of time on Atlantic. I'm walking.
Hopefully somebody found the golden ticket in their gift bag.
Yeah, I don't know where
And congratulations. And thank you so much, everyone. Thank you. Thank you.